This video is sponsored by Aquashine Exteriors, professional jet washing and cleaning services across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, including Dorset, Hampshire and Wiltshire. Are you feeling it's time to get that driveway nice and shiny for when you come home? Or are you wanting to get that guttering tidied up and spotless again? They deliver this, plus much, much more. Please head into the description below where you'll find their details for their website, including the socials, Facebook and Instagram. You also need to find their before and after portfolio. You can also call them on 07503 998 088 for a free quotation. Don't wait till next week. Don't think you'll do it another day. Pick up the phone, give them a call, check them out. Good evening and thank you for joining me and Jon Spark on Cherries Red Army for what is our final preview of our final home game of the season. Jon Spark, it's great to have you back on the channel for another preview. We're going to come to you, the fans, in the interactive chat. If you watch this back on replay, thank you very much as well. But Jon, I don't know if you've heard, but the Reds are staying up. What a feeling. We achieved our objective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's funny. It's funny to say we've achieved our objective because that's kind of how I look at what Parker did for us in the championship. It was like that was the bare minimum he achieved there. Whereas I do think that Gary O'Neill has done far more than just the base of achieving an objective of staying up. You know, it's still a very interesting time as a Bournemouth fan and the Bournemouth community looking at Gary O'Neill and what he's done, looking at the team, the expectations of the Bournemouth fan base compared to the expectations of those outside of the Bournemouth fans and those that watch us regularly. It's been interesting listening to a lot of conversations from those that aren't Bournemouth fans and then seeing what people are putting on Twitter as well in terms of how O'Neill is doing. And there'll be an interesting discussion over the course of the off season just to see what happens at the club. But yeah, it certainly isn't going to be going anywhere anytime soon. I'm pretty confident of that.
Yeah, stuff on paper, stuff on the board can very much not tell the whole story for those media people or fans of other clubs that maybe watch a little bit of highlights on Match of the Day. But Bournemouth, we've achieved what we set out to achieve before a ball was kicked, and that was to remain and stay in the Premier League. And the future looks bright, and there's going to be lots of conversations to come on Cherries Red Army post-season where we want to talk about this squad. Where will this squad be next season? What's Bill Foley going to do? Lots to talk about. Follow us on our journey. Make sure you subscribe to Cherries Red Army. We are on our way to 1.6k. I know you can help us get there. Please do keep helping us. You've supported us all season and before that. Thank you very much. Hit the like button on this video. If you're a Manchester United fan or a Bournemouth fan, please do hit your like on this preview. And of course, the chat is open. Get in the chat. Tell us who's joining us and give us your thoughts throughout the next hour. And Jon, before we go into the Joe Rothwell derby preview, I do want to sort of talk about a few other stories and debates that are going on between the fan base on social media and some stuff that's been happening this week. So let's rattle through a couple of those and then we'll go into the preview. Hamad Traore, a signing initially on loan with a deal at the end of the season. That's been confirmed. He'll be a Bournemouth player next season. Look, he had a bit of a bright spark in his early few games. I know he missed a great chance against Brighton at home. He's got a lot of talent. His feet look good. He's got to sort of settle a little bit more to the country, to the club. But the talent looks good and we hope that he can improve next season and be a really good player for us. Hamad Traore will be a Bournemouth player next season.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd imagine that one was probably obligation to buy, assuming that we stay up, because considering that it was 24 hours after we were confirmed as definitely safe, he was confirmed as a permanent signing. So I don't think that's too much of a surprise. It's an interesting one with Traore at the moment because he's just not featured very much in terms of, you know, he's just been injured, and there have definitely been flashes. There have been moments where you kind of see what the higher ups and the scouts have seen of Traore and gone, yes, okay, he's got what it takes, but at the same time he still looks very raw in the same way that Ouattara looks incredible in moments but then just makes very basic errors a lot of the time. And you feel Traore is sort of in that stage as well. He's still learning the game. He's still going to be very much getting used to playing in this league. You know, the Italian league has certainly improved recently, but it's not at the level of the Premier League. So it's going to be a very interesting competition, particularly if Billing stays, because Traore seems to pretty much basically be a number 10. I think he played on the left a little bit for us at times, sort of more nominally on the left, but he's very much more capable. Looks like he's much more comfortable down the middle. And if obviously Billing has taken that role as his own. So if Billing is still around, so then that's going to be a very interesting competition next season in the number 10. But very pleased for him to come in. Do you know the amount that's for, Kirk? Because I don't actually. I haven't looked it up.
I want to think it was in the 20 to 30 million pound marker, and I felt like the deal was to get it over the line into the next window. That's how I felt they were trying to spread the deal, so it was a loan with an obligation to buy rather than not an option to buy. I think there were still some things in there. Maybe if we didn't stay up, maybe it was up to Traore whether he wanted to stay. Not sure, but I do think it's 20 million plus. And a couple of other things that I do want to be aware of. I think you're making a good point about Billing. I think there's a massive debate to be had about Phil Billing in pre-season, whether he's going to be in a Bournemouth shirt next season. And if Billing goes, we got to replace his numbers because he's been fabulous for us in the Championship. He's added effectively Billing's goals and Tavernier's goals have kept us up, if you want to make an argument for that. Traore's best season for Sassuolo was 7 goals, 2 assists. Season before that, I think it's 5 goals, 3 assists, in that sort of area. So look, Traore is a player that likes to take the ball, create opportunities. But if we're going to lose Billing, and Traore is going to become that player with the freedom and the free role ahead of a CDM, then he's going to need to add goals. And at the moment, he hasn't done that. But he's only had a few games and a few moments.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I bring up the price because I don't know the exact one, and it may well be that he becomes our record signing because Jefferson Lerma still to this day, 5 years later, is our record signing at 25 million. And I think on Transfer March they have him at about 30 million euros. But that's not obviously the most guaranteed source of intel, particularly with even if they market themselves as the place to go to for transfers, they don't often get their figures right. So that one would be an interesting one at some point to find out more about. But I'm just hoping that he kicks on next season, gets a preseason behind him. It's always more difficult for players coming in January, so he'll be familiar with the team, familiar with the coaches, getting used to working around the area, living in the area, and hopefully he'll just kick on next season.
Talking to Jeff Lerma, a guy that's still considering his options. There's a small chance, we keep saying, that he might stay. This could be his last appearance potentially at home in front of the fans. There are reports potentially that London could be a destination at Crystal Palace. John, look, I will send Jeff off with all the love in the world. Surely, though, he doesn't sign for another Premier League club, especially a club that potentially we're going to be competing with next season in Premier League positions.
Yeah, absolutely. The talk, and certainly I do remember hearing about an interview that he had, or at least something coming through about the fact that really he would like to return to Spain because Colombia is culturally similar to Spain, obviously all Spanish speaking, and moving his family back to where he obviously spent a good few years with Levante. I'm pretty sure it was that we got him from, if I remember correctly. The idea of him turning down a contract with us and going to another English club, that would be a bit of a kick in the teeth. Lerma will always be a legend at Bournemouth. I think that he's not gone through issues that other players at Bournemouth previously have done in terms of refusing to sign contracts, let's just say, for example, after staying here for a significant amount of time. But he wears his heart on his sleeve. He's the midfield enforcer that a lot of people love to see get stuck in. He was maybe a little bit too reckless at times in the first few years. His yellow card record haunts him to this day, but he's actually significantly improved that over the last couple of years. And he's been a fantastic servant to the club. And if he does move on, I like you, Wish him all the best in his next role, and I do think that the only thing I would say is a shame that, and it's something that Bournemouth don't do enough of, is actually being able to sell their players rather than just let them run out of contract while we're in the Premier League. Because I do think Lerm has had his suitors at times previously, but it's never been anything too strong. So, at this point, obviously we'll lose him on nothing. But I hope at least he doesn't stick. If he does not sign a new contract with us, I really hope it doesn't then make a move to London or anywhere else in the UK and takes himself back to Spain where he has enjoyed his time there.
Stephen Dyer hopes the local man stays, and Sammy Nell, so not ready for Jeff to leave. Will be gutted if Jeff leaves for another Prem team. Just wondered, John, this is not going to be a massive debate, but best ever central midfielder, Premier League player for us? I mean, Harry Arter is in the conversation, maybe?
Yeah, Harry Arter's in there. I think some fans maybe want to, although perhaps obviously it wasn't during his best years, but obviously we did have Jack Wilshere playing for us in midfield at one point, and admittedly, if he was well past his best, but a lot of us still remember some of the great stuff that he did for Bournemouth in that one season on loan, and he did help us reach our highest ever finish of ninth, that second season in the. But I would also argue that Philip Billing is turned his image around so much that he's very definitely in a shout, even if he is playing almost as a second striker nowadays. He's certainly in with a shout for it as well. But yeah, Lerma is right up there in best ever central midfielders for Bournemouth in the Premier League anyway.
We are going to get on with the Man United preview in just 1 minute. But finally, Marco Senesi. Where has this conversation come from? Potentially, Manchester City are interested in Senesi. Now, we're not talking Ake levels yet. Obviously, Ake had a few more years to establish himself. Senesi, I think, has had a good positive season. I think there's times, especially early on, where I felt like he got rolled a little bit too easy by the attacking players he was up against. I know he struggled when he played to the right of a 2 in a fixture, but Senesi has had a good first season. He'll be better for it as well. And with him settling even more again, similar for him, he should be a good centre-back for us next season. I don't see Senesi yet, maybe in the future, maybe being in a conversation for a top 14.
Realistically, no, not this summer. I would say I wouldn't say it's out of the question. The rumours for it come because Aymeric Laporte doesn't want to stick around just sitting on the bench all the time, and Man City will need a 4th or 5th choice centre back to add to their bench. And what Marco Senesi has shown is that he is very good on the ball for a centre back. And as much as he has made his mistakes, we think back to when he massively lost confidence in the Burnley loss, when you could see that one mistake, I think, completely shot his confidence, and it took him a little while to sort of get himself back into the team. I do firmly believe that in terms of all round, he has been our best centre-back this season. I would say that certainly as a defender, I would have probably Mepham above him and arguably Stevens, but he is full-blooded. He's Argentinian. He's got that South American flair, but he's also got that South American hustle about him. He is El Gladiador. He does not shy away from throwing himself in front of a block, which is what the great Bournemouth centre-backs have always done in Francis, Cook, Ake, and Kelly at times. But I can see why, because you really don't think he could necessarily have come straight from Feyenoord to go to a big side in England, because you've only got to see, like as you said, he got completely bullied by Jesus in his first start against Arsenal. But as I said at the time, you've got to appreciate that he's coming from a league where it's very different. You don't deal with those kinds of physical strikers. The Dutch league is the fastest league in the world in terms of it's just constantly going at it, counter-attacking, and there's very little middle ground. So you have to deal with pace, and you have to be good at dealing with pace, which I think Senesi is relatively good at. But he's on the ball is fantastic. And that exactly what a team like Man City need to do. Now, do I think he would fit into that starting 11 at the moment? Absolutely not. I mean, God, if you watch that City game versus Real Madrid, it was like watching a different sport. It was absolutely ridiculous. But I mentioned on the Eagle-Eyed Football preview before the Crystal Palace game, I think Marco Senesi is our best centre-back at the moment, as I said, in terms of an all-round. And I do think that in a year, he will go to a top six side. And I think that when you have a player that you've clearly brought in and are improving, and he is showing what he can do, as I mentioned before, Bournemouth need to do better at selling high. Centre-backs are not a hard thing to come across, particularly as more and more, we've spoken enough about having two left-footed centre-backs, which we've happened a few times so far this season. So, the opportunities will be there to get other players in. And clearly, if the scouting network is doing the job that it's doing, which I think is doing really, really well at identifying talent at the moment, you've got to take advantage of that by getting some good years out of a player and then selling him on for a good profit. And bearing in mind, we only brought him in for 10 million, I think. Probably,
sounds about right.
I'd imagine that will probably rise with extras, probably to about 15. But I mean, you could easily ask for 25 for him at the moment. I really do think so. So I'd say another year, and then we'll see what happens. But I'm not ready to see the club sell on one of their best assets right now. Anyway,
good conversations, more to come, more debates after the season has finished, and you'll be able to get involved interactively in the chat. Right, this weekend at Dean Court, Bournemouth take on Manchester United. The last time the Red Devils came to town, they were sent packing by Josh King. What's going to happen this time round on Saturday?
Cheeky one, square, and
The league table is on the screen. Manchester United are fourth, played 35 games on 66 points. Newcastle kick off very, very soon against Brighton in a game they have had rescheduled. Bournemouth 14th, 39 points. We're still looking to get to that 40-point marker. John, earlier on in the season, just after Christmas, it was our first game, I think, of the new year. It was Bournemouth going up to Old Trafford. It was a game where we didn't play very well in the end. It was in that spell just after the World Cup where we were struggling to score goals. Gary O'Neill was confirmed as head coach and trying to run this sort of team full time. We weren't scoring goals. We were at football matches before half time a lot of the time. We lost to Chelsea and Crystal Palace previously, and it was only after the goals had gone in for Manchester United that we sort of got on the ball, and Jadon Anthony had a few chances, but it was Manchester United 3, Bournemouth 0, and I can remember the goals being really soft. I don't know how many times I've said that this season, but the goals we conceded back at Old Trafford earlier on in the year wasn't great.
Yeah, no, I was there. It was one of the worst away trips I've ever had, really, in terms of I was up in the rafters. It was raining. It was very cold. The performance was so abject for a large part of it on the pitch. And it was during that period where, with a bit of hindsight, I do think the losses of Solanke and Tavernier were just massive for Bournemouth. And obviously before the World Cup break, Tavernier was Gary O'Neill's plan A, B, C, and D. And if he didn't have Tavernier, it really just did look like we had no way to transition from back to front, because he would just receive the ball on the wing and just bomb forward with it. And that was the case since basically even during Parker's brief stint. Tavernier just looked so vital to us getting forward at all. I don't remember basically anything from that game because I don't really want to. But the one thing I do remember was sort of the build up to the third goal, where we pressed relatively high, and Ryan Christie messed up his marking job and ended up sticking to the wrong man and leaving leaving space for the only pass that Luke Shaw had from left back. He plays a 1-2, and then they've gotten past half of our team with that one simple set of passing because the press is completely broken down. The ball ends up going long, and then it gets cut back to Luke Shaw, who ends up going from left back to striker and finishing it for the third goal. And at the time, I was just thinking, like, I think that just shows that I don't think Gary O'Neill knows what he needs from this team yet. The press was inconsistent, and that was one of the biggest problems we had at the time, that the press wasn't very good. When we were pressing high, which wasn't often, it was a shocking press. And we didn't look like we were going to create anything. Didn't look like we were going to keep a clean sheet. And we weren't scoring any goals in that period. We went 4 games without scoring a goal, I believe, straight after the World Cup break. It all looked terrible. And after that Man United game was the first time I was thinking, maybe this really is too big for Gary O'Neill, because it just doesn't look like he's got anything going at all in terms of his plans. And, it was about sort of 3 weeks later when we'd gotten a draw against Forest. A couple of weeks after that, when we got a draw against Newcastle. It wasn't long after that before we our famous loss to Arsenal. But things started to look like they were going to turn a bit when we got new signings in, when we got Solanke back, when Tavernier came back and he scored the only goal in our first win after the World Cup break. But that was one of the lowest points of the season, that loss to Man United, because it looked like there was just nothing going on plan-wise for Bournemouth. But thankfully, we did Gary O'Neill did end up turning things around, but it didn't require some investment. And you do have to praise the higher ups for putting the hand in the pocket and helping bail out what was looking like a team destined for relegation after that loss to Man United.
Yeah, seeing some players in those clips there. I mean, Jadon Anthony, I think, had a few chances in that game, as I said earlier on, and Siriki Dembele had a part to play in that fixture. So we've come a long way from January, of course, with the money that was spent as well. And when you look at Manchester United, and we lost 3-0 at Old Trafford, and that's where their better form has come. Only one loss at home, Old Trafford, where you compare that to on the road. I think they've had 9 losses on the road, and that's 8 losses on the road they've had. So 1 loss at home, and that's clearly why they're in the position where they've got a chance of getting Champions League football next season. So if you're going to look at it that way, because Erik ten Hag has come in again, Manchester United have switched managers up, and I think I saw something the other day, John, where Erik ten Hag has had the most wins in his first season as a new manager out of all the new managers they've had since Alex Ferguson. So he's picked up a trophy. They're going for the FA Cup. They're trying to get Champions League football. They'll look at this as a pretty positive season, but this is a challenge for them, because on the road they've had some real problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been sort of kind of funny hearing some debates actually from the wider media and football about who's had a better season in terms of, has it been Arsenal or Man United? And I think that with no trophies and failing to win, Arsenal haven't had as good a season as Man United, considering they've got 1 trophy. They could win a second, and they're on course to make Champions League football, which is far better than they've really been doing over the last sort of half a decade, or really since they sacked Mourinho, I suppose, even if the football's a lot better now. But yeah, it's funny how teams can just have complete changes of fortune at home and on the road. I mean, you've only got to look at Nottingham Forest in comparisons between their home and away form. But yeah, United have dropped off a little bit just generally towards the end of this season, with losing Martinez at the back, with losing Rashford as their, pretty much their only goal scorer in the entire squad.
16.
It's been a difficult time recently for United, and they have struggled to get consistent wins. We should be looking at it as an opportunity to really take the game to United. I think we will, as I think we did against Chelsea, and I think that as much as it's sort of been looked at as obviously that Palace performance was diabolical, but then if you add that to the loss to Chelsea, then people sort of start looking at Bournemouth as a team that was on the beach. And I would disagree that we played anywhere near sort of beach worthiness against Chelsea. I thought that was a very good performance, and that we were, basically you can throw 150 million, 200 million pounds worth of talent on from the bench, and they both, well, at least one of them scores, and it unfortunately turns the match in their favour. Whereas, let's not talk about that Palace game. But yeah, we should definitely be trying to have a go at United without doubt. They have a lot of quality still. I mean, it's Billing and Solanke are going to have a tough time against the likes of Casemiro and their centre backs. Yeah, exactly. So it will be a tough game, obviously, but I don't think that we should necessarily be too scared of United, which I think we have been against certain teams. But even if you look back to our performance against City at home, I think we were a bit unlucky to lose a lot of the early goals, and it was a much more positive performance than I've seen us put up against City for some time, and we actually still lost that one 4-1. So we go into the kind of confidence and the thought process that we did against City, against Liverpool, against Chelsea. I think we've certainly got a chance to at least get a draw.
Yeah, so Man United have lost their last 2 away games. They haven't even scored in those fixtures. So that's what we've got to lean on for the Cherries. Man United's last game, though, was at home, and it was against Wolves, John. And they did get back to winning ways. Funnily enough, Wolves didn't even register a shot on target either. But, Lopetegu's done a great job for them. He's taken them from the bottom of the league to being comfortably safe, and they'll also be playing Premier League football next season. But Man United got over the line. Goals from, I think, Anthony Martial in there. Wan-Bissaka's performing there on the day as well. And they got the job done. It looked like it was pretty comfortable from what I saw. And they'll go into this fixture off the back of a win. But they've got to get over this hurdle of struggling away from home. But they did get a win last time out.
Yeah, I didn't catch the game, obviously. Saw there was a late goal by Garnacho, which threw my 1-0 prediction off in the end, unfortunately. But as I mentioned, it's been an interesting time for United, and they are definitely looking over their shoulder with regards to Liverpool in the exact same way that Newcastle are, although United have certainly got the easier run-in of the two of them. But they can't afford to slip up. If I think as Bournemouth fans, we'll be probably looking at this an opportunity to help get Eddie Howe Champions League football, to be honest, in terms of, I mean, I can only speak for myself as the fact that I still am a big Eddie Howe fan, and I do have Newcastle on my second team, and I would love them to make the Champions League and for Eddie Howe to get Manager of the Year. That won't happen because Pep will get the treble and he'll get Manager of the Year. But it's interesting to have at least a sort of a say in the top 4 race, I suppose, seeing as our season is essentially over at this point already. But of course, we have had, I think it was a conversation I had with you about, if we lose all of these games once we've hit safety, what does that necessarily say about
What's the message?
The motivation of the manager? Although I did see, I can't remember who it was again. I did see a tweet from someone saying that performance against Palace basically proves that the squad aren't playing for the manager, and he's unable to motivate them, which I think is an outrageous thing to say after one game, because by that example, I can say that Brighton aren't performing for De Zerbi because they lost 5-1 to Everton. I think that this will be an interesting one to look at, how well Gary O'Neill can motivate the side. I do think that it is a bit different when you're going up against a bigger side. It is easier to motivate them because it's kind of like you can show the world kind of thing, because it's Man United. What's the meme? It's Man United we're talking about here. If you get a result against them, then it does send shockwaves, even if they're not at the peak of their powers anymore. But it's an interesting. It will be an interesting one, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens on the day.
Now, I know you don't want to talk about it. I know we did a reaction video straight after Crystal Palace, but it's part of our previews that we have a look back at what happened last time out. And it was Crystal Palace 2, Bournemouth 0. It was a really good performance from Eze. What a talented lad he is. Now, if Sahar doesn't sign, maybe it's not the be all and end all because they've got Eze and Elise. And it wasn't a very good day out for the fans that went. I know I got friends that went to the fixture and said it was almost a complete waste of time. The Chelsea result, like you said, I don't think we were that bad. I think we were poor with the goals we conceded, but we were okay from a performance point of view. Not registering a shot on target, not for the first time this season, for me, isn't really that acceptable. And not showing enough desire or heart is also not that acceptable. I think we accept, John, that we're not going to win every week, but there are ways to lose a fixture. And when you're already safe, although we want to hit that 40-point marker, the pressure is not really on us. Man United are trying to play for Champions League football. They're competing with 2 other teams and they might lose out. I think the pressure is on them, especially when they can't score away from home at the moment. So we need to go into this fixture just have a little bit of a go. I know we can't open ourselves up to the talent they have, but we've got to have something about us as well, especially at home. Last weekend, though, we didn't really have anything. It was Crystal Palace 2, Bournemouth 0. And I did say to you that I was worried once we got to 39 points that these last 4 games might be a bit of a disaster. And we're currently halfway there at the moment.
Yeah. I think I remember seeing... I think it was a journalist putting up. I think it might have been a journalist from Bournemouth Echo putting up that that Gary O'Neill might have been experimenting a little bit in terms of particularly putting Mepham at right back, which utterly failed as an experiment. Really, nothing against Mepham. It's just I don't know why you put him there if you had the option. But I think that one thing I forgot to say during that review that we did is that. What I feel as though Gary O'Neill might have been trying to have a look at in terms of Bournemouth and what they might need to do next season is that Bournemouth have clearly shown themselves to be a very good counter-attacking side, or at least have developed themselves into a very competent counter-attacking side. But when the impetus is on Bournemouth, we've clearly completely failed. We haven't won a single game this season when we've had more possession than the opposition.
Got there in the end.
Yes, every single win so far this season, we've had less than 50% possession. And against Palace, we very clearly were trying a slow build-up. We were passing around the back a lot. And perhaps Gary O'Neill was probably looking at this Palace side as one that don't press really all that much, are going to not really putting as much effort in because they're already safe. Their season's over as well. It's a game against 2 teams that have nothing to play for, and thought, let's sort of see what this team can do in terms of building up from the back. And that may be part of the reason why you have Mepham there. But again, I think that the less you ask him to do on the ball, the better he's going to be. If you ask him to do too much, he's going to make a mistake here and there. And in next season, I think that because we've shown ourselves to be a good counter-attacking side, a lot more teams might sit back and ask us to be sort of provide the impetus. But whatever we were trying to do, whatever the plan was, because I really can't tell what it was rubbish. And that may have been partly to do with the plan and the setup, but the players also were terrible on the day. So the annoying thing is you can't necessarily sort of make any conclusions from that performance because everyone was so off it. But there's definitely going to be some element of what the manager did, how the manager set them out. So, yeah, I think that this game against Man United is going to be a much more comfortable return to the impetus is all on United. We will sit in a mid-low block and try and get them on the counter, exactly how we played against Liverpool. Although, admittedly, we also had some nice moments and interplay against Liverpool as well. So, it's going to be this game is going to suit us so much more than the Palace game did. So, I am hoping that we actually go into this one with the same plan that we have been very successful with over the last couple of months, and really have a go at United.
More frustrating than the result is the Jeff Lerma incident, the punch into the nose, potentially a broken nose Jeff Lerner as well. And on Monday Night Football, Howard Webb was on there talking about some VAR instances that they've reviewed, or trying to show some transparency. I know that he's been on Talk Sport and some radio stations, and this is the vision, to be more open. They can't completely be 100% open, because I don't think FIFA or the football sort of governing body allows it, but they want to try and justify some decisions. Do you think this will take VAR to a little bit of a better place in the future? We know that there's still going to be issues with it for obvious reasons, because a lot of it's subjective. But if they are transparent and they can admit when they've made mistakes, will we sort of understand better as fans going forward? Because that Jeff Lerner incident, I just don't understand what anyone's thinking. It's clear and obvious to surely everyone, bar anyone sitting in Stockley Park.
Yeah, I think that the issue at the moment is that before Howard Webb came in, there was too much interruption from VAR. They were getting involved in a lot of sort of very, very subjective decisions when they really should be trying to be as objective as possible. And in this one, with Howard Webb coming in, he wants VAR to be as hands-off as possible. But in that case, you get some quite close to pretty objective decisions that are looked at too subjectively. And in this case, the video officials should have asked the referee to go and have a look at that one again, because it, as bonkers as it was and as ridiculous as it is to see a quite blatant punch, as accidental as you could argue that it was, he clenched his fist and he punched Anderson punched Lerner in the nose. And I don't see how, if you put that, admittedly, as we've talked about, football isn't played on paper. You write that sentence down and you go, okay, so the next sentence is, and Anderson was sent off. But that's not what happened. So, but then, you go back to the incident that Howard Webb looked at on Monday Night Football, which was Senesi's tangle with Tony in that Brentford game. I could have told you exactly what Howard Webb spoke about with that one. There was clearly a foul on Senesi first. But what I'm amazed at is that because the referee has said it's purely the second contact, or seemingly how I've interpreted it is basically because obviously they provided the audio as well, and the referee said second contact. So he understood that there was a first contact, but he wanted the video, but he was telling the video officials that I'm giving this penalty for the second contact. So what the video officials did was focus purely on what the referee said to look at, and didn't scroll back 2 seconds to see what the first contact was and if it might have been a foul the other way around. So they're not looking at the whole picture, which is exactly what they need to be doing. Like, how many times have we seen decisions where, like, 6 seconds previously there was an offside, or there was some other decision that in the build-up to a goal that was, took anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds to go in, and then they've given the decision because of something happened a while back. In that one, they didn't even scroll back 2 seconds. So here's the main issue at the moment with VAR. It's that it's still humans. And it's the problem is, it's like, as much as people talk about VAR is a problem, blah blah blah, VAR, it's not the technology. The technology works great. It's the people operating the technology that can't get things right when they're really objective, and then aren't intervening when maybe they should be, or then doing it. It's like referees get, I don't know, 90%, 95% of stuff right. You're now giving a different set of referees an opportunity to get 90 to 95% of things right. There's going to be plenty of decisions that sneak few. I still want to keep VAR, but I would honestly prefer you to have some ex-professionals in there, because
I agree.
I think that referees understand the game to a point, but ex-professionals will be able to look at certain decisions and just go, no, it's clearly this. And that's what most fans will see. So I do think that the technology is fine. The technology needs to be improved to some extent, because I think the automatic offsides, if that does come in, I think there will be a significant improvement, because there'll be a lot less whining about it. You need to sort out the system of people using it better, and then we might start getting some more consistently less debatable mistakes.
Yeah, I think I did a VAR video right at the start of the season. I was walking around Kings Park and I was talking about like getting ex-professionals in to help. Obviously, there needs to be some consistency there as well and make sure there's no favoritism and all of that. But just people, players that have played the game, ex-players that have played the game. And look, Bournemouth are going into this fixture at the weekend, still haven't had a penalty. Maybe 2 chances left, 2 games left. If you know in the chat, when was the last time a Premier League team didn't get a penalty in a season? Would love to know. Don't know that fact. John, I was going to go on to potential lineups, predicted lineups for this weekend. Now, this is what Man United's team was last weekend against Wolves. De Gea in goal, Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Lindelof, Luke Shaw, Christian Eriksen back for them, Casemiro, Bruno Fernandes, top assist maker through the middle, Anthony off the right, Sancho off the left, Anthony Martial. Marcus Rashford didn't start in this game. They need to definitely win, as we know we're talking about Champions League football potentially. When you look at that squad, what changes do you think we might see for their team on Saturday?
I can't really see too many changes from that. I think the back line is probably going to be the same because, I mean, Martinez is out for the season, and I don't think Maguire would start if Lindelof and Varane are both fit. Obviously, Joe Varane was substituted, so I don't know whether that might put him in a doubt, but I thought Varane was still injured. Actually, that'll be a tough one for Solanke to go up against. Varane's a very good defender. Casemiro is obviously the big one, and Eriksen is the creator in chief. But Bruno Fernandes is also a very dangerous player as well that you've got to keep an eye on. Martial, I expect to start. The only change might be on the wings. Anthony is significantly overpriced in terms of what they paid for him and what his output has been at Man United so far. But then Jadon Sancho hasn't exactly blown anyone away either. And with Garnacho scoring against Wolves, you could see him starting. What Man United do have is a plethora of talent on the wings. So you could see 6 different sets of wingers pop up, and you wouldn't be surprised at any of them. But I think the core of that squad is going to be the same for the match on Saturday.
Going to take a look at Bournemouth's side from last weekend and what changes we might make there. What changes would you make in the chat? Do tell us what you would do to the team, because we've spoken about it, John. There's fans out there going, look, we're safe. Give some time to those players that haven't played much football for the likes of Brooks. And that's just sentiment. And that goes against everything I've said about not letting the season fizzle out. Get as many points as possible. I think we can match our best points tally if we were to win both games, which would be 45 points. And I don't want to see this season just end with us losing. So I really think, and again, though, John, it's whether Gary O'Neill is trying to think about what his identity is next season. Now, there are fans out there as well that says, let's sign Vinya. I'm very much of that. I very much do like Vinya, but again, he sounded like he didn't perform well defensively against Crystal Palace. So does Smith come back into this side? If Vinya can't defend well enough, is it a back 3, John? I mean, I really don't know, what Gary O'Neill's going to do this weekend. I think we went for a spell where we knew what the team was going to be, and I'm of the thinking now that I really don't know what the side is going to be. I look at Ryan Christie and think, he's had some brilliant performances, but still not adding enough numbers. And I think effort and energy and teamwork only goes so far, because eventually you need players in those positions that are going to add goals and assists, because that's how you get higher up the league. I don't know, John. Sabani started last weekend. I just don't know what this side's going to be, what the formation's going to be. What are you thinking?
So I think we'll definitely see Adam Smith come back in at right back. I would be amazed if he didn't start. I wouldn't be surprised to see Chris Mepham come in to the centre with Kelly in place of Zabani. Zabani had an okay game, but I don't think he's really quite up to speed as of yet. And I'm hoping a really good preseason, and we'll get him set ready to play, because on the ball he didn't look as good as I'm sort of expecting that he should be for what sort of he's been touted for. And I do think that positionally he was lacking at times. Vinya had a shocking game defensively. I think it was This doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Viña looks like a left wing back. Viña looks like what we thought Zamora was going to be when we started him in the championship, just bombing on and being fantastic going forward and a complete liability at the back. And Viña has produced a few good defensive moments. And when he's tasked with sticking a bit more, I think he does a better job. But quite very early on, within the first 15 to 20 minutes, he kept getting caught at like left wing when suddenly he's way out of position and just not where you need him to be. I think that with Smith coming in at right back, what we'll do is what we've done basically all season is that Smith the entire sort of right side will shift inwards to make a back three when we're on the ball and attacking, and Viña will just bomb on. Because when he's attacking, Viña's great. Viña is easily Premier League quality as an attacker. I'm not entirely sure he is as a defender at the moment. I'll need to see more from him because he's had very iffy bits. But as for the rest of the side, I really wouldn't be surprised if it was exactly the same. I think Rothwell still has that spot comfortably over Cook. Lerma's definitely going to be playing. As for Christie, Brooks, Ouattara, Anthony, you could play any of them. You really could. I don't think any of them necessarily nailed down that spot. Christie's work rate is almost irreplaceable, but you're right. His attacking numbers just aren't there. But I do think that he has been being a lot more involved over the last couple of months. And we all spoke about how Ouattara coming in basically means Christie's just not going to go back in, and then he tripled his game, basically. His work rate and creativity upped, but the actual final product hasn't really added, apart from he did eventually get an assist, obviously, not long ago. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot stay the same there, but certainly defence should change in a couple of places.
Yeah, 1 goal, 1 assist for Ryan Christie. I did say he was fantastic in that spell at Leicester and all that, but I did say effort will only take him so far in the long game going into next season. He's not going to keep picking up starts just through effort. Viña as well. I was having this conversation, John, with another mate of mine about Viña, and he was saying, look, he's brilliant going forward, similar to what you said, but he said defensively he's just not very good. But I was saying, John, if he was good defensively and he's brilliant going forward, surely he plays for Roma. I mean, are we not in that situation that are we going to get a fullback that is brilliant going forward and brilliant at the back? I mean, the last fullback I can really probably say was that good was Charlie Daniels, and he worked himself up the pyramid.
Yeah, true. Charlie Daniels, like a lot of Bournemouth defenders, did not work hard enough to stop crosses, but they preferred to give about 15 yards to the crosser. But I think Zamora was legitimately that good for a long time.
You had a few people that disagree, but you mind. But yeah.
I do think Zamora was legitimately that good for a long part of the season. That's why I'm so devastated that he's not going to be staying, because he could have progressed massively. He would have earned us quite a lot more money, I reckon, if we'd been able to keep him a couple of seasons, and he would have gone to a higher up Premier League side, I reckon. But them's the breaks. I do agree with you in terms of if he was the full package, we obviously wouldn't get him. But I do think that I expect at least would be very good in the Championship defensively level left back. Whereas really, I don't think he'd quite hassle it as a defender in the Championship at the moment because of how easily he's beaten most of the time. And that's probably the reason why Jose Mourinho, a famously attacking coach, didn't necessarily favour him, because he's not going to be able to do the defensive work that he wants his fullback to do. As a wing back, I think he would be phenomenal, because a wing back has more behind him to rely on and can get forward with abandon a lot more easily. But again, I do think that in a similar way to we've seen even the likes of Zamora, if he's in a much more solid lower block where it's like, no, don't go forward, defend first, keep the shape, I think most defenders can work well within that, because there's the instruction, there's the solidity, and everything works well. And I think that you've seen in performances against the likes of Spurs that he was actually pretty decent defensively. And then obviously he scored a goal and he was fantastic going forward for us. But against Palace and at times against Chelsea, he just ran forward. And while he was involved, and obviously he scored the goal, a fantastic goal against Chelsea, defensively at times you were just like, he's just miles out of position. and he's not looking like he's going to stop the guy once he gets back in position. So that's the frustration and the worry at the moment. When it's a lot more free form and you basically let him to do what he likes going forward, he's not going to be able to put in this. He's not got it about him to necessarily put in the defensive performance, or at least that's what I've seen so far. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah. Chat, you need to start thinking about your score predictions for about 5 minutes' time. Stephen Dyer has said Jack Stacey. Now, this frustrated me seeing him on the bench with Adam Smith last weekend when we've got Chris Mepham at fullback. Look, I've tried to stick up for Jack Stacey quite a lot in the last few years. I really, really wanted Jack Stacey to become a really fantastic right back for us. I think there are parts of his game. Funny enough, going forward, I think he's okay. Defensively, he's obviously struggled at times. He had a few games at the start of the season. I think Jack Stacey is on his way out the club, sadly.
Yeah.
But weirdly, John, Luton might be coming into the Premier League. And if Jack Stacey's going out, I do wonder if he returns to Luton, his ex-club. The question still stands whether he can cut it at Premier League, of course. But I think we will be setting our targets for that right back position and a level above Jack Stacey. But for me, going back to the point, was just frustrating to see Chris Mepham at right back and 2 right backs on the bench. That was well annoying for me.
Yeah, as I mentioned, and I think I get the idea from, I think, a tweet from a journalist, and sort of like it was an experimental lineup by Gary O'Neill because there was so little on the game, but the experiment completely failed. So, and I do think it was a look at perhaps Adam Smith has operated as a centre-back for 70% of the season, essentially, because the left back has been the one that's bombed forward, whether that be Zamora or Vigna, and Adam Smith has been tasked to just stay and help defend. And I suppose if you're going to turn him into a centre-back anyway, you might as well put a centre-back there. But that didn't work. It just didn't work at all. And like I said, Dan, that's partly because you were asking him to do more on the ball than he is really capable of doing. Whereas Adam Smith, as much as I feel as though he is far too defensive on the ball at times, I don't worry that he's going to give the ball away. And obviously he's got the experience, and he's got the canny ability to win free kicks from referees under very little pressure when he's in his own box. So I do think right back is probably the first place I would look to upgrade in terms of who we should be looking to buy next season, because Jack Stacey will be going. Ryan Fredericks hasn't added anything, even really when he's been fit. Occasionally he's looked okay, but and Adam Smith is getting on a bit. And I would like to see some more attacking impetus down that right-hand side to support the likes of Ouattara, who tends to be on his own on that right very often. Yeah, I would just rather have Adam Smith, even if we don't necessarily upgrade on him next season. I think he'd still do a really good job in that sort of semi centre-back, right-back role. It's just much better idea than putting a centre-back in there, particularly Mepham.
Good question in the chat though, Stephen. And final thought on Jack Stacey. I don't think the last 4 coaches have believed in him since Eddie Howe, and that's probably affected Jack Stacey's confidence as well. So that's my final thought on Jack Stacey. We do have an answer to the penalty question. Stu Seddon in the chat, the record is 50 games without a penalty. Sheffield United from March 91 to 92. Oh, is that Premier League though? Does it really matter? Does it really matter? I mean, if that's the record.
That was before football started.
Yeah, that was before Barclays. Stu, great knowledge, or great.
What I would say, ask about is that when was our last penalty in the Premier League? Because you'd have to look it up, because I can't remember. Dom
Slanky?
No, in the Premier League.
Oh, in the Premier League.
Because obviously you'd have to go back to our relegation season. But like, well, how long
in the chat as well? 6 minutes to go, guys.
How long have we gone without a penalty in the Premier League? We can stretch it. We can add 2 years to that as well, obviously, because we weren't in the Prem for a couple of years.
Did we score a penalty at Old Trafford in the COVID season? I think we lost something like 5-3, didn't we? I wonder if we scored a penalty
I
there.
can't remember that
No.
at all.
In the chat, do tell us. But now we want you to subscribe to the channel. We want you to hit the like button. If you're watching this video back on replay, thank you very much. Get your thoughts in the comments because it's your 1 minute warning for those score predictions between Bournemouth and Man United at Dean Court this Saturday. Time for your score predictions in the chat, but we are not the only game going on this weekend. You have got an early kickoff on Saturday between Tottenham and Brentford. Liverpool take on Aston Villa, Wolves against Everton, Bournemouth against Manchester United, Fulham against Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest take on Arsenal at home, West Ham Leeds, Brighton against already relegated Southampton, Manchester City versus Chelsea, and Newcastle Monday night against Leicester. And if they beat Brighton and beat Leicester, I think that's enough for the Magpies. John, interestingly for me, going to Goodison Park in just over a week as well, I am worried it's going to be like a non-event. If Everton get a result at the Molineux, then it might be all over. They might be safe because if Leeds don't get anything at West Ham, potentially there's nothing on this fixture at Goodison Park, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily all that bad. I mean, I think it's been quite an interesting sort of reversal because I think of our last stint in the Premier League, because it was something that we all noticed when the fixture list came out. The fact that we started against Villa and finished against Everton, which is exactly how our 5 years in the Premier League started and finished, at home to Villa and ended at home to Everton. And in that stint, we lost at home to Villa, and then we beat Everton away and went down. And this time around, we've beaten Villa at home, and we're already staying up. So to complete the trilogy, we'd have to lose to Everton away. I obviously don't want that because I'm going to be going to that game and I want it to be a bit of a party for us Bournemouth fans. But yeah, if there's nothing on it, I don't think it really matters. If anything, it's better for us because if Everton don't have anything to play for, then we should go out there and really try and win that game even more comfortably. We've already got a record of a 7-1 aggregate this season against Everton over Cup and League. So we've got a decent showing against Everton over this season.
Right, you are putting your scores in the chat. Chris Hubble has gone nice and early. Wants to get Dean Court rocking. Come on, final home game of the season. Jim Favola might put on a show as well. We might be in for a bit of entertainment before the game, but he's going for 3-1 to Bournemouth. I think that's 3-1 to Bournemouth there. And we have got, what else we got? Now, Sammy is the creator of the famous 3-1 on Cherries Red Army. Not had it this season. Definitely not had it this season. I've watched us beat them 1-0. I've watched us beat them 2-1. I wonder what my score prediction could be. 3-1, Sammy is going for in the chat. Well, that's what I'm predicting for you, Sammy. 3-2, that Mark Singleton. Hope to see you in the North Stand. Mark, thank you, Stephen. Up North, thank you for joining us. He's going for 2-1 to the Cherries. Now, they're buying into this theory, John, that United are not good on the road. Haven't even scored in the last two. Maybe. Do you know what? I'm going to chuck my score prediction while we freeze in the chat. So I do think we got an opportunity this weekend. If we put the right side out, we put a balanced side out, we get the right players in the right positions, we attack this game right. The pressure's on United rather than us. I do think, John, that we can get something, can get to that 40-point marker. Might play a bit of reverse psychology here. I do think, though, that it would not surprise me if Man United turn up and finally find some goals on the road and they win 3-1 and clinch that Champions League spot potentially. But it's a bit of a down score prediction, isn't it? But I do think we can get something, but I'm just not sure what I predict from us because I thought we'd get something against Chelsea and we didn't. And we played well against Leeds. So it's really difficult to predict. What's your score prediction before we head back into the chat?
So you thought you'd put your prediction out there and then didn't actually predict anything?
I think I predicted reverse psychology because my score predictions have been pants the last couple of weeks anyway. So I think I'm going for that. I think Man United might get a 3-1 win, but I'm hoping that I'm just wrong with predictions at the moment and that flips reverse psychology that we actually get a result. I obviously want the Cherries to get a result.
Right. If it is 3-1 in that way, Sammy will be very disappointed in
yes,
you.
Definitely.
But Yes, I think I similarly went that I thought we'd get a result against Chelsea. I
Yeah.
can't remember whether I predicted a win or I think I did. I think I did predict a win. I think I got to the point where every time I've reached the point at which I've had enough confidence to predict a Bournemouth win, reality has come back to bite me in the arse. So I am going to stick to I think still quite a positive result in a 1-1 draw. I think we've got it in us to get a result. I'm not expecting a win by any means, but I'm certainly expecting a hell of a lot better than what was against Palace. Something more akin to what the kind of performance you put in against Liverpool and Chelsea. Obviously, two very different results in those two games, but I do think both were very encouraging. So yeah, I'm gonna go for 1-1. Put a little dent in Man United's top four ambitions. Or speaking of Newcastle, are 2-0 up against Brighton. So at half time, so they're doing themselves all the way good, and can ensure just a win against Leicester will guarantee themselves Champions League football, which I think we'd all love to see Eddie Howe stepping out on a Champions League night.
And Callum Wilson playing Champions League football as well.
Yeah,
That would be
absolutely.
Nice. Gene is sort of agreeing with me. Reverse psychology, Gene, right? You know where we're at. Man United 3, Cherries 1, but we know that actually we're probably going to get it wrong and the Cherries are going to get all 3 points. Alan's going for 2-2. Cameron, thanks for joining us. He's going for 1-0. Sammy, yes, is coming in for the predicted 3-1. The famous Cherries Red Army. Stu is coming back with those stats that we need. 26th of July 2020 was our last pen in the Prem. Josh King versus Everton.
So that was our final game of the season.
Last day of the season.
Yeah, that was the last day of the season. It shows how much I remember of that game.
Gene's confirming reverse psychology. There we go. And
Sean predicted
Woodland.
1-1. He's matching my prediction.
He is. Sean Woodland is going for 1-1. That actually brings us lovely in the chat there with Sean Woodland, because this weekend before the game, you can head over to Queen's Park Golf Course for a pre-match meal barbecue. Let me show you more. So Queen's Park Golf Course, they are a stone's throw, a small walk to the stadium. They're doing a big match barbecue ahead of this game. Hopefully the weather's nice there as well, Sean. I'm sure it will be. But head over there for a pint, for a barbecue. Lovely location, lovely scenery. Get ready for the big match. Yeah, you've got your big match barbecue, and there's other Cherries themed food, Senesi food on the menu potentially as well. So head over there. I might try and get over there as well. So if I see a couple of you over there before the game, it'll be nice. So thank you for sharing that with us, Sean. Head over to Queen's Park Golf Course for that. That was lovely in the chat there. John, it's been an interesting preview. We've talked loads this evening, an hour and 3 minutes. Loved it with the fans. Your final thoughts going into this fixture, going into it. We want to finish the season positively. 2 losses. Can we turn it around this weekend?
Yeah, I would. I think if nothing else, I would like to see us get a draw to see what actually a draw looks like on your preview little zoom in thing, because at the moment it's only green ticks and red crosses. We haven't drawn in ages. I don't even know what your draw stamp looks like.
Do you know what? When I was designing this as like the final 10, I don't even know what my draw is, what the actual emoji is. Is it a handshake? I haven't even worked it out yet, and I might not even need to. But I'm looking forward to. I'm glad you've noticed that.
Yeah. so yeah, I would like to see what happens because obviously if we draw against Everton last game of the season, I still won't see it because there won't be another preview to look for after that. But yeah, I would like to see. To be honest, I do think, whilst I agree with your points, as we did discuss on a previous video, I think particularly after that Crystal Palace game, I am just looking for a performance above all else in this game, because that game against Palace is enough to shape people's views of Gary O'Neill. That was how bad that game was. So I would like to see things significantly turn around, put in a very strong performance, and really just take the game to United. Play our best game. and try and hit them on the counter, soak up the pressure, and get, and produce the kind of football that gets bums off seats and gets people cheering for what should be a very good atmosphere with our last home game of the season, now that we are confirmed as safe.
Brilliant. I'll also see you at Everton, John, and we'll have plenty of videos to debate and discuss, have some fun through June as well. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed this evening with you. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks again for having me on.
Please do subscribe to the channel. Go on, smash that like button. If you ain't done it yet, we've been here for an hour and 5 minutes. Come on, hit that like button. If you've watched this video back, thank you so much. Do get your thoughts in those comments, your score predictions, who you think will score. Tell us anything you want about those predicted lineups. Who do you think will start for United? Who's going to start for Bournemouth? Lots of discussions. Put them in there. Love to read them. But that is your match preview for Manchester United this weekend. The Red Devils, they have got the pressure on them. They need the points because Newcastle look like they're going to take one of those Champions League spots. For Bournemouth, we're just trying to get to that 40-point marker. 1 point will do it. John's looking for a draw. He also wants to see what image I'm going to put on that next preview intro. One chance left. Thanks for joining us this evening. Been great to spend this moment with you, the fans, and we'll see you on the next one. Up the cherries.
Up the cherries.